The air around the Christmas table was heavy with tension, though the decorations sparkled as if mocking the reality beneath them. Plates of food sat untouched, laughter from neighbors drifted faintly through the window, and my heart pounded in my chest as I tried to swallow the weight of years of rejection. Then it happened. My mother's voice cut through the room, cold and sharp, louder than the carols outside. "You're dead to me." Those words struck harder than any blow. In that instant, I realized there was no going back, no saving what had long been broken. I stood up, my hands trembling, but my mind was clear. That night, I cut all ties, and in doing so, I uncovered truths about my family, myself, and the injustice that had followed me since birth. Growing up, Christmas was never magical for me. It was a battlefield disguised with ribbons and lights. My mother played favorites, and it was never me. She doted on my siblings, praising their successes, excusing their failures, and setting me aside as though I were an outsider in my own home. The unspoken truth was always present but never admitted. My darker skin, inherited from my father's side, made me less than in her eyes. At school, I faced the cruel whispers, the exclusion, the reminders that I didn't quite fit. At home, I hoped for refuge, but instead found silence or scorn. Over the years, those small slights became wounds. When awards came my way, she dismissed them. When I struggled, she told me I was making excuses. I worked harder than anyone else, trying to prove I belonged not just in the world, but at her table. Yet no matter what I did, she found ways to push me aside. My siblings learned to mimic her, enjoying the privilege of her approval, while I became the scapegoat, the reminder of what she wished she could erase. So by the time that Christmas dinner arrived, I should have been prepared. But nothing prepares you to hear those words, to have your own mother erase you with a single sentence. I looked around the table, hoping someone, anyone, would defend me. But their eyes fell to their plates. Their silence screamed louder than her voice. The rising tension had been building for years. That night, it spilled over. The conversation started innocently enough. Holiday traditions, small talk, old stories. But then my mother brought up my choices, my life, my very identity. She framed my existence as a failure, a disappointment she wished she could undo. I felt every eye on me, waiting to see if I would defend myself or crumble. My chest tightened as the years of injustice clawed their way up my throat. I thought of the time she had praised my siblings for achievements they barely earned, while mine were treated like accidents. I thought of the job interviews where my name was questioned, the neighbors who avoided me, and how instead of defending me, she joined them in looking down on me. Her words, "You're dead to me," were not born at that table. They were the culmination of every slight, every denial, every time she had sided with a world that judged me for my skin. That night, something broke inside me, but not in the way she intended. I didn't crumble. I rose. The climax came when I pushed my chair back. The sound of wood scraping the floor cut through the silence. I stood taller than I ever had, though my hands shook. I told myself, if I stayed, I would accept her erasure. If I left, I would reclaim myself. I walked out, the warmth of the house vanishing behind me, replaced by the cold sting of December air. For the first time, I understood that sometimes family is not who shares your blood, but who respects your existence. The fallout was immediate. Phone calls went unanswered, messages filled with blame and guilt-tripping poured in. Relatives claimed I had overreacted, that I should apologize for walking away. They refused to see the years of cruelty that had led to that moment. But for once, I didn't bend. I moved forward, carrying the pain but also the freedom of finally cutting ties with a source of constant harm. In the months that followed, I built a life without their shadows. It wasn't easy. Holidays were quieter. Family photos no longer included me. But in the quiet, I found peace. I discovered friends who became chosen family, people who celebrated me without conditions. I achieved milestones with no one dismissing them, no one reminding me I was less. And slowly, I realized that my mother's words, cruel as they were, had given me a gift, clarity. Looking back now, I see how racism doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes, it comes from the people who should protect us most. My mother's rejection wasn't just personal. It was a reflection of a society that taught her to value one child over another, based on appearances she could not control. Her silence in the face of injustice had been a betrayal, but her words that night were the final confirmation that I deserved better. As I close this chapter, I think of you listening. How many of you have stayed at tables where you were not welcome, hoping for scraps of love that never came? How many of you have silenced yourselves to keep peace in a war that only destroyed you? I walked away from that table, and in doing so, I walked toward myself. Sometimes, the greatest act of revenge is not anger but absence. Not shouting back, but refusing to stay where your worth is denied. My mother said I was dead to her. But in truth that night, she died to me. So I ask you this. If your worth is denied at someone's table, will you keep begging for a seat, or will you build your own?